My name is Lois Roden Milder. I'm known as Ducky. That's my nickname, and I've had it forever. Um, I was born in Sioux City, Iowa, in 1931. My mother was Idell Wasserman Roden, and she was born in Sheboygan, Wisconsin. And my father, David Lewis Roden, came from Russia. Um, Living in Sioux City was marvelous. I mean, it was a very vibrant Jewish community. At the same time, Omaha was, and of course still is. Um, I really connected with Omaha because I went to Esther K. Newman camp. I think I was 8 or 9, and then I went on to be a counselor. And I knew a lot of Omaha people because of that. And then, not knowing that, I, of course, would marry and live in Omaha. Um, in high school, I went to Central in Sioux City, but then I went away to a girls' school. Um, let's see, junior and senior years of high school, and I know my father was very disturbed about it because it was in Lake Forest, Illinois, called Ferry Hall, and it had a Jewish quota. And he was furious that I would even want to go near a school that had a Jewish quota. But that was not unusual in those years. That was like from 46 to 48. And then I went to the University of Nebraska. Um, Later in years, I married a Mike Milder from Omaha and joined the Milder family, a big Milder family here. And we had 2 children, young Mike, who we lost when he was 37, and Emily Milder, who lives in Omaha and has our granddaughter, Abby Milder. My husband Mike was very involved in the junior chamber of the junior chamber, yes, in Omaha, and also ADL and many other areas of charitable organizations. And he traveled a lot with Junior Chamber International, so we had friends in so many countries, which made travel really very exciting. Um, I was on several boards, Brandeis University, Women's Committee when it was active here in Omaha, and also was on the board of the Jewish Federation at one time and of Temple Israel, and was involved with the Emmy Gifford Theater and many other kinds of organizations. And I have always loved Omaha. I think it's such a great place to live and has such a great Jewish population. I belong to Temple Israel, and just recently, in the last 2 years, my granddaughter had her bat mitzvah there, which just gave me such tremendous joy to see that she has gone on with a very nice Jewish life. Well, maybe I should go back and tell you why I was nicknamed Ducky. I think when I was about 18 months old, my parents or somebody threw me in our pool. And I think I had to swim. That was my survival. So that I became Ducky, and I did swim. So I became Ducky. And then I think later on, when I was even maybe 10 or 11, I was giving swimming lessons. And actually, at Esther K. Newman, when I was a counselor, I was a swimming counselor. So I just kept on with this name, though I think it's actually kind of funny. I'm thinking about the organizations that I was involved in Omaha. Um, well, one of them being the Emmy Gifford Theater, and the Giffords were just such marvelous, rather eccentric, arty people, and so interesting to be with. Um, and as far as Brandeis University goes, I was president of Brandeis University here for a year, and it was too bad that that didn't continue because what a marvelous school, which we all know that we would like all our kids to go to. Um, and I've always been very active at Temple and on the board and headed a lot of, we used to have a wonderful retreat every year in Nebraska City, as a matter of fact. And I used to head that with a lot of help from other people. And the Jewish Federation, I mean, I've just always known from my dad that, and my mother both, who were very involved in Jewish life, that we needed to support everything we could Jewish, because if we don't do it, nobody else will. So going back to my story, Mike and I were married in 1958, and we rented a house for 7 years, and then and of course it had oil, as many houses had oil brought often from Milder Oil Company whenever they needed it. But when we built our new house, we didn't put an oil furnace in. Of course we didn't, but we didn't want anyone to know that because that didn't look good for business. But anyway, Mike continued in the business until, I would say, let's see, we're 2019 now. I would say maybe 15 years ago. And then he retired. And our daughter took it over for a while and then sold it. And then also going back to a few organizations, Brandeis University. I don't know if I mentioned that I was president here of Brandeis University, and many marvelous women, Anne Fair, Rosie Zweiback, my sister Helen Novak, who was married to Sid Novak here in Omaha, were all very involved in that endeavor. The house that Mike and I built, the architect actually lived in Omaha. He was originally from Lincoln, Don Polsky, a marvelous, we thought, brilliant architect. He was his mentor was, and he worked with Richard Neutra, who was one of America's most famous architects. Anyway, he built our house on Elmwood Road, which was a marvelous old neighborhood, Fair Acres. But I think that part was on the south side of Dodge Street, and I think it was called Buena Vista. And Mike's parents lived on the corner in a wonderful old house. And they owned the lot that we built our house on. In fact, one year I gave my mother-in-law a pair of binoculars because I thought maybe she ought to keep her eye on us. So anyway, that was fun, and she thought it was a very cute joke. Anyway, our house, we lived in our house only 10 years, which was really unfortunate. The University of Nebraska was ready to expand, and they expanded westward, and they took our house. It was one of the first houses. My in-laws' house first, and our house second, and they took it by right of eminent domain. I remember when Barry Goldwater was running, and that was at the time for President of the United States. And that was at the time we were building our house. The house had an Asian look, a pagoda-style roof. And when the beams came, they were gigantic beams, pitching from the top out to the sides. They were wrapped in paper of primary colors. And I remember as the beams were put up, the students across from the university were shouting and cheering, and they thought that it was going to be, we were going to put Barry Goldwater signs up. They thought it was exciting. It was really fun. Whatever they wanted to think was fine with us. But we loved that house and thought we would be there forever. But 10 years, and we had to move. We moved to a home, again in an old neighborhood of wonderful homes, on 92nd and Davenport. So, and then from there, we were there 14 years. Our kids, we were empty nesters by then, and we bought a townhouse in Regency, and I've lived there now, and with Mike. Mike's been gone 5 years now, and I've lived there. We lived there for 30 years. So we lived there longer than any other place, thinking we would be on Elmwood Road for the rest of our lives. So on Elmwood Road, the fun thing was that we were near Mike's parents. And Mike's dad had quite a presence about him. He was pretty fabulous, and so was Mother. And the oil company really existed until about, I would say, 10 or 15 years ago. And Mike stayed there until that time, and um, we we thought it was kind of an exciting company, and people knew about it. I'm going back to talking about the oil company. Uh, well, it had to change its venue of business because people weren't using oil anymore. They turned to gas for their furnaces. So the oil company used Scally oil products. So the oil company would be still using some of the larger corporations were using, like Union Pacific, were using oil. So that continued, the business continued there. But also the gas was a big business. The Scally oil products, which I had mentioned before. But eventually, the business became a very difficult one because you had to put a lot of money into buying and buying the gas and then distributing it, and it didn't work as well as it had in the beginning. So then they sold. I felt so lucky that I was able to work with Emmy Gifford at the Emmy Gifford Theater. And I remember one day being over at her house. We were painting sets and so forth, and she was so artsy and so interesting and so smart, and I just loved doing any kind of work I could with the theater and with Emmy. And at one time, later in her life actually, she was doing sculptures. They were plaster of Paris, but she painted them, and they were all people we knew. They were either celebrities or people in Omaha. So I took a friend from Kansas City who wanted to buy her husband a sculpture for his desk, for his new office. And she found a wonderful one. It was of a secretary sitting at a desk, and it was charming. So she bought that, and then I eyed this couple. It was quite, I would say this piece is at least 14 inches tall. It was a couple dancing. And I realized that it painted, it was charming. And I have it actually, we bought it. But I was afraid my friend would buy it, but I stood quietly and didn't say a thing. And then when I got home, I called Emmy, and she put it away for me. The man who is of the piece of sculpture was John Kennefick. He was president of Union Pacific. I don't know who the Dowager was, but it is a most fun piece, and we just continue to laugh. But meanwhile, Mike and I, on all of our trips, which were many, until our kids got into junior high, well, we didn't think we should leave by then, we bought a lot of art together. We loved all the things, and we agreed together on what to buy on all our trips. And so, and I'm an artist. I paint. I still paint. And to me, that is the most meditative thing I could ever do. And I've always loved and been very involved, and even could draw when I was a little girl. So it's something to have after you get a little older, if you're not totally active in your art, to just pick up and just enjoy. Also, I would say in 76, I started working with Jack Costage. His name was John W. Costage. He was a designer, interior designer in Omaha, and so brilliant. He's been gone now a few years. He did some of the most wonderful homes in Omaha. So I started working with him and worked up to the time he passed away. And I still am working. I still do some houses. Now I'm doing some of the houses of the children of my clients. So I'm in the arts. I love it. That's really my thing. Another project, being a decorator, that I'm sure I was chosen for this, was to be on the committee to help design and redo the Rose Blumkin home, to do the interiors. That was a very exciting time to see it happening, and I remember that doing commercial or work in a nursing home is totally different than a residence because there are many rules that you have to follow of what kind of fabrics, and you have to be aware of possible fire prevention and all of that sort of thing. So it was a new experience for me, but it was a very exciting, and I love working with color, so that was never a problem for me. But the whole experience with Nancy Noddle and Sivy Rothman was a very exciting one. I was really proud to be part of it. One of the exciting times at Temple was a board meeting I attended, and our rabbi, REA, who I adored from the moment I met him, came up with the idea of tri-faith. And I thought, what a brilliant and beautiful idea for us to be related to people who went to a mosque and people who went to a church. And so it was, I'm trying to think if it was 10 years or 12 years ago, the concept came about. And we already had the mosque. The mosque already wanted to be part of it. And so did one of the Episcopal churches, but then they decided they really didn't need to nor wanted to move west. So then our other partner became the community church, which it has worked out so beautifully. And what a beautiful concept. And being at the first meeting when the community got together, and being at the yearly picnics that we all go to, all three denominations go to, and bring food and are careful of the food that other people can't eat, and get together and talk about our families and talk about all the things that we have in common. That's a very exciting thing for Omaha. I can remember being at a biannual Huber Union, a biannual, and sitting at a table talking about this idea of tri-faith and the tri-faith campus. And somebody piped up and said, well, I had no idea who anybody was at the table, said, well, that's never going to happen. But, I said, oh, it will happen because of the people I know who are involved and whose concept it was in the very beginning. It definitely will happen. And look what we have now. Not only do we have three marvelous buildings on a wonderful piece of property that used to be the Jewish Country Club, the Highland Country Club, and now there is a bridge in the middle which connects all three, the church, the mosque, and the temple. And it really is kind of interesting. There's a little creek that runs through that property, and the name of it is Hell's Creek. We couldn't change that. So that was just one of the most exciting projects I think I've ever worked on. One of the fun experiences we had with some friends who came here from Tokyo. Their names were Ray and Etsuko Hattori, and they were friends of ours through Junior Chamber International. So they came to visit us, and we thought, well, they have to go to Borsheim's, absolutely, and to meet Ike Friedman. And Ike Friedman was married to my cousin Roz Wasserman Friedman. Her mother and my father were a brother and sister, and her father and my mother were brother and sister. So two Rodens married two Wassermans. So anyway, that's how we all came to be related. And so Ike was offered Seiko watch, which Ray Hattori owned in Tokyo, for all of the United States. But somehow he decided against taking that on, which is really interesting because, he was so smart and ran such a great business. And Borsheim's, I mean, everybody knows Borsheim's. And we used to call it, when our kids would come home for vacations, well, one of the things they had to do when they were home was go to the Jewish Museum, and that was Borsheim's. Then, when the Hattoris were visiting us, we took them to Roz's father's, my Uncle Max Wasserman's store, Excel Novelty Company. And he wanted to go there and get some 1,000-piece puzzles for his father so he could take them back to Tokyo. Well, that was one lovely relationships we had when we traveled to all the different congresses and met so many wonderful people who became our really, really good friends. So I think in closing, I just would like to say something to my daughter Emily and my granddaughter Abby. I mean, what more joy in life could be having a daughter, and a daughter like you, Em, and then that you brought your dad and me, this joyous kid, as a single mother, wanting to have our grandchild, who is the joy, was the joy of Dad's life and is the joy today of my life. And I just want to thank you for doing that for us. We love you. I love you. And I love Abby too. Lots.